Hey everybody, I guess I'm live now. Sorry for being late. Yeah, I know that it's a busy night apparently. Ember's on interviewing Dr. Tapioca Weasel, which I just found out, and I feel bad about stepping on stuff. But anyway, I've got it's kind of difficult scheduling stuff. I hope you will all catch Ember's stream uh, uh, if you can, and I'll try to make this short and sweet. But I want to step into some crap that has been going on, in reaction to one of the great heroes of the atheist movement, Richard Dawkins, and his latest trip into the politics of sex and gender. And so let's just go ahead and look at a bit of his interview with Helen Joyce. An interesting choice for Dr. Dawkins in featuring a person whose uh, outlook on trans issues is notably focused um, on the proposition that uh, trans people cannot exist, that they are deluded or deceiving or in some other way being dishonest about who they are. When in fact, uh, for many of us, being ourselves is about the most honest thing we've done in our lives. And maybe people don't understand how just that particular focus is profoundly disturbing. Anyway, let's just go ahead and present arms. Let's see. I think we're on this one. This is Helen talking about people with differences of sexual development or intersex people or uh, that stuff and that kind of thing and Richard, may I call you Richard? uh, Dr. Dawkins wholeheartedly agreeing with some degree of incredulity. Here we go. Zip, beep, play.
And so there are these external providers who are basically lobby groups that write unbelievably inaccurate materials and then sell them to schools. So I've seen short videos and they're so nicely made. There's one by a guy who calls himself Ollie, and his sidekick is a balloon, and they call themselves Pop and Ollie. And Pop and Ollie, it's very bright and colorful. And they're like, your sex is the best guess that a doctor had when you were born. They looked at you and guessed. We're just guessed. We're waiting for you.
Wait a minute.
Did you see his face? Guessed. Yeah, okay.
Guess your sex.
You had a penis, and yet they guessed.
Yes. Yeah. They often,
a doctor.
Yeah, they often conflate this fact that there are people who have differences or disorders of sex development, which is a tiny number of people.
Now, let me just stop here for a second and say that many people who are intersex dislike that particular phrasing, or differences or disorders. Notice the disorders of sexual development. I mean, these people are human beings. And to view their status as being disordered in some way seems to me to be seems to me, and does seem to other people, For example, Castor Semenya does not consider herself to have a disorder of any sort. She doesn't identify as intersex herself for herself. She feels she is who she is. Which seems to be unacceptable to folks like Helen Joyce and apparently Dickie Dawkins. But
I mean, a few people do need investigations too.
0.02%.
Exactly.
0.02%. Oh, really? Okay. Let's just examine that a little bit more. Let's see. How do I do this? I am so bad at this stuff. I can't even find where my freaking cursor is. There it is. Let's examine that a little more closely because I've got another. I've got this. Got this little thing here. That is, yeah. This is from, this is a piece from the Intersex Campaign for Equality. I've got the highlighted part is interesting. I just want to read this, this bit here. Some groups use an old prevalence statistic that says we make up 1 in 2,000 or 0.05%. Apparently, Dr. Dawkins has a lower percent of 0.02, as he says, percent of the population. But as they say here, that statistic refers to one specific intersex trait, ambiguous genitalia, which is but one of many variations, which combined, as they are in medical diagnostics and coding, constitute the 1.7% estimate by esteemed professor of biology and gender studies Anne Fausto Sterling of Brown University. A similar, slightly higher statistic was also reported in How Sexually Dimorphic Are We by Blacklist et al. In the American Journal of Human Biology. Quote, the belief that Homo sapiens is absolutely dimorphic with respect to sex chromosome composition, gonadal structure, hormone levels, and the structure of the internal genital duct systems and external genitalia derives from the Platonic ideal that for each sex there is a single universally correct developmental pathway and outcome. We surveyed the medical literature from 1955 to the present, which I believe was 2015. Let me see, 55, 65, 75, 85, 95, 05, 15, 60 years of literature. "60 years of medical literature. We conclude that this frequency may be as high, for the studies of the frequency of deviation from the ideal male or female. We conclude that this frequency may be as high as 2% of live births. The frequency of individuals receiving, quote, corrective genital surgery, however, probably runs between 1 and 2 per 1,000 live births. That's where that decimal 2% figure comes from. The erroneous belief that we're an extremely tiny percentage of the population is often used to dismiss our need for legal rights and protections. Thus, we encourage everyone, particularly allies and or members of the press, educating others. I suppose that would include a science educator like Dick Dawkins, um, and or members of the press educating others about intersex people to please use the information and prevalence statistic provided here to accurately do so. Goes on in a footnote to say the Intersex Society of North America, ISNA, 1993 to 2008, popularized the 1 in 2000 decimal 0.05% statistic, but clarified on its website, here's what we do know. If you ask experts at medical centers how often a child is born so noticeably atypical in terms of genitalia that a specialist in sex differentiation is called in, the number comes out to about 1 in 1,500 to 1 in 2,000 births. But a lot more people than that are born with subtler forms of sex anatomy variations, some of which won't show up until later in life. And then cites Anne Fausto Sterling's research. So I got to wonder a little bit. Stop sharing that tab and go back to the thing here. I got to wonder a little bit about the effusive nature in which Dr. Dawkins receives this wisdom from a person who categorizes differences of sexual development as a condition. This is one of the things that is troublesome for, particularly for intersex people, in that, particularly coming from someone who is horrified at the notion of treatment of trans youth and surgeries being performed, which they're not on trans youth, but are on intersex babies. It's particularly disturbing that to hear that the intersex community would say that non-consensual unnecessary surgical intervention is performed on babies because their parents and their doctors recommend it for social reasons. I'm trying to maintain a certain level of decorum here, but I want to call your attention to the fact. We'll go back to Helen here. Yeah. Note this up here. This is Dr. Dawkins' channel, which he calls the poetry of reality. To me, it's somewhat less than poetic to describe human beings born in the fullness of humanity with no difference aside from no health no difference of health concern aside from the fact that they are possessed of a different body form, are subjected to surgery for their parents' convenience or for the satisfaction of consulting physicians who say, "Not girl, not boy, but we can make them one or the other, and they'll never know." That's not poetic to me. That's barbaric.
Exactly. And even then, mostly they're getting investigated for conditions that don't cast doubt on their sex. It's just their genitals have not developed normally. So, I mean, probably about half a dozen people a year in this country, in Britain, have their sex assigned at birth. The rest of us, the doctor writes it down. Anyway, so it says, so the doctor guesses your sex, and then when you're old enough, you get the chance to tell everybody what sex you are. Are you male, female, a boy or a girl, or something else in between? And then stars come behind him, and it looks like you're going through the galaxy, and it says, or something else entirely. And we get off this putative sex spectrum down here. What are you meant to make of this if you're 8? Like,
Right.
first off, that you're very boring if you think that you're a boy or a girl. But also, you're just given no hints as to what this gender thing is. So you look around and you see Barbie and G.I. Joe and, that sort of thing. And you say, well, I don't like Barbie. I might be a boy. It's incredibly regressive.
Yes.
Tragic, isn't it, Dick? I can tell that neither Dawkins nor Helen Joyce has ever spoken to a trans child or someone who has been a trans child, because it's not about the toys. It's not about the dolls. It's not about indoctrination. It's not about any of the things that are brought up here. It's about how one feels. And if a child brings concerns about their gender to the attention of their parents, it's because they honestly feel something's off. And if such a one brings such a concern to the attention of their parents, whether their parents are going to be supportive or not, there will be intervention. With medical professionals, with people who have dealt with this, to work out where's the problem lie, if there is a problem. To ascertain, is this a phase? Is this a whim? Or is this a deeply felt, insistent, persistent, consistent feeling? And this is a thing that is done, should be done, I think, outside of the limelight of popular opinion and rooting about on YouTube here and there, probably including from myself. I wish that this wasn't the topic du jour, but it is. And it clearly is, because Dr. Dawkins feels that with his how many subbies does 32,800 subscribers. 32,000 people are listening to this fellow showcase the attitudes of Helen Joyce, who dismisses the experience of regardless as to whether you think it's a small percentage of the population. It's a large enough number of people deserving of compassion and treatment, don't you think? And they deserve that compassion and treatment taking place outside of a maelstrom of criticism in the press, on YouTube, and in social media, everywhere. So let's just continue to roll this tip a little bit.
Somewhere in your book, there's a story about a mother who had 8 children, and she said, and not a single one of them is boring cis. Is that what she said?
That's right.
Yes.
So cis is this.
All right, enough of this fucking bullshit. Pardon, I did say I was trying to maintain a sense of decorum, but let's just stop this tip because you all can go watch this interview, and I understand that Dr. Dawkins is now having a nice sit down with Jordan B. Peterson this evening, which I am sure will be enlightening to many. But given Jordan B. Peterson's track record towards all things gendered, all things psychological, philosophical, etc., as regards this issue, can go fuck a stone. Oh yes, I'm sorry, that decorum thing. I kind of went off. I kind of went off the rails. Anyway, get off my goddamn screen, Dickie. Let's get rid of that. Maybe go to another portion of the thing. All right, let's see. Present. Harms. Yeah, go ahead, Dick.
Helen, what do you think lies behind this odd distortion of reality?
So that was basically the question that got me into this in the first place. And I mean, I've been thinking really almost full time about this for about 5 years now, and I don't have a pat answer.
Get a
for you.
life.
I think, like a lot of interesting phenomena, it's a lot of things. I would say that when I started to write about it first, I quickly realized that this wasn't treated the same way as anything else. Like just asking very obvious questions, like
just asking questions. Yep, you know it. That's all. Just asking questions. Yeah.
Don't you think that if we allow people to self-identify their sex, this will lead to, for example, destroying women's sports or putting rapists?
Yes, that follows. Tell me, Helen, have you ever in your whole goddamn life, which I'm sure is a blessed one. I'm sorry. Have you ever heard of someone who decided to change their sex in order to win a pickle dish? I can assure you that the downside of that is really more substantial than the value of said pickle dish once you win it, if you win it at all, if you're able to even fucking compete for said pickle dish. So,
In women's jails, people would turn this back on me and say, you think that trans
Um, while I am aware of incidents, and quite famously publicized incidents of trans women in um, uh, female correction facilities being um, abusers. Let's try to keep it safe for YouTube. I should think that housing a trans woman in a male prison might not be the safest thing in the world. AR whistling, clarify that comment if you could. I don't want to f things up, and I'm not paying enough attention to the side chat. I promise I'll try to do better. Anyway, let's just keep on rolling.
People are predators, or you think that trans people are in bad
Predators.
faith, you're a bigot. And I hadn't experienced this before in, at that point, about 14 years as a journalist.
That's a willful misunderstanding. And
Yes, it is. It is willful misunderstanding. And I mean, I slowly became aware that what we were talking about here.
Maybe, Helen, if you weren't basically saying that trans women are men and therefore are predators. Um, you wouldn't be surprised at what pushback you get. Maybe, Helen, you might be wrong about both of those assertions. There are bad actors in any community. There's no question about that. I wouldn't dispute that in the least. But you want to hold trans women specifically accountable for all trans women accountable for the actions of a few bad actors, very few bad actors. And that's your whole shtick. Thanks, AR. Clarifies it. I thought, I just want to be clear on. I don't want to be broadcasting crap out here. Anyway, let's keep on going here, hon.
Here was an intensely linguistic movement. Like, there isn't a sense in which a man can become a woman except linguistically. Like, yes, okay, he can have operations, and some people do. Most trans people don't have any operations, don't take any medicine, don't have any genital surgery. But that doesn't change your sex. I mean, the reason the female eunuch is called that is that Germaine Greer was pointing at the way that the man is seen as the full human and the woman is seen as the lacking human. She is a female eunuch. She's a man that you've castrated. But actually, female people aren't male people lacking something.
You see, for Helen, it all comes down to genitals, doesn't it? It all comes down to that. I hope I'm not strawmanning her position, because I think she's asserted it quite carefully and quite strongly here. That basically one cannot change their sex. That trans men are equally as unauthentic as trans women, though she never says that. Her focus is exclusively on trans women, and her insistence is that they were born, were, are, always will be men. A lot of people a lot of trans people will basically say one cannot change their sex. And some will even go so far as to say no trans people argue that one can't change sex. I have a slightly different and perhaps more nuanced view of sex. I view it as a cluster of attributes that is not immutable, that can change. That cluster of attributes can change. Some parts of the cluster of attributes can't change, won't change. But that doesn't mean that the vast preponderance of attributes don't change or can't change. And we'll get into that with a really terrific piece by a very intelligent young person who did a deep dive into some of these issues and might shed some light on the biology. Pardon me, needed a little bit of a sip because my voice is getting dry. We'll get into that. Let's see if Helen's got anything else enlightening to say about this stuff. Enlightening as to her position anyway.
Or male people lacking something with a little grow bag that you pop a baby out of every now and then. Female people are their own category. Female and male are actually very profound categories. They're profound biological, evolved categories.
Well, evolutionarily, they have to be. That the gift of giving birth is something that pervades the whole anatomy and physiology and psychology, actually.
Exactly. And if you're a mammal, every part of your body is female. Like earthworms have both parts,
Yes.
But, my hands are female. My jaw is female.
May I ask how that holds true for people with a mosaic composition in terms of their DNA? I mean, and in terms of even their chromosomal makeup. I mean, I think somewhere in this video, Dawkins says, well, these are exceptions that prove the rule. And I would submit that, no, the exceptions break the rule that you have made that sex is binary exclusively. No, those exceptions stand in opposition to that rule for humans and for mammals. Again, it's a cluster of attributes. One doesn't walk into the supermarket and observe men and women and distinguish which is which on the basis of their history of childbirth, the gametes they produce, their fertility or lack thereof, all of these things that one can't possibly observe. So to that extent, in the real world, how critical do you need to be to ascertain what this person's gender is, this person's sex is, on the basis of anything other than what meets the eye? It seems to me that Helen here, and I guess Dr. Dawkins here, is profoundly disturbed by the notion that what they observe might be incongruent with their own perceptions of what is a woman, what is a man. Which is why I titled this stream, What is a Dawkins? I think it's rather presumptuous of both of these people to be quite so presumptuous, to be honest.
It's not just that I have, I'm a man with a uterus popped in and no
Yes.
penis. But so it was the only sense in which a man can become a woman or a woman can become a man is by saying so. It's a speech utterance. And so I've come to see, I think there are many things happening here. There's things happening in medicine, in politics. But one of the things that's happening is a long run, maybe 2 or 3 century move towards seeing categories and classification as inherently oppressive. So people think, heteronormative is a bad thing, or they think that, the traditional family is constraining, and
here's the tip that is profoundly dangerous, because now Helen is moving into the societal implications of all of this. And where does it stop? The implicit in what you just said is that in fact heteronormativity is a good thing, that the family is the basis for society. These are talking points that are difficult to square with respect for people who are gay, lesbian, non-traditional in their family arrangements. So it's not entirely focused on trans people. It's focused on the family, which is perhaps why Focus on the Family was named as it was. I mean, it's fundamentally a political view, as YouTube Punk just points out. Sounds like she's being prescriptive. Well, she is. I think she's being very, very prescriptive. And I think we've seen enough. And you all go ahead and look at the rest of this video if you like. But I'm gonna sort of switch it up right now and focus on the on the assertions and assumptions that lie behind Dr. Dawkins and Helen Joyce's view of sex as exquisitely and utterly binary. So let's just get rid of you. Bye, Helen. I'm going back to the farm here. Let's stop sharing this effing tab and share something else. So you see, other people have commented brilliantly on this stream, and I guess I just had to throw my 2 cents into it. But here, I want to show some of this brilliant piece that Hemant Mehta, who commented, also commented brilliantly on Dawkins' latest tip in his own blog / commentary pages. But let's see what we can do here. Share screen. Whoop-de-doo. Gotta find the stupid thing. Nope, not that one. Oh, maybe it's up here. Yeah, here we go. There it is. This is this young man, Jackson Wagons, the channel, wonderful channel, brilliant kid. He did such a great job with this, way better than I could do. Especially for someone this young who has whose own curiosity led him to deeply research this stuff. And I want to say at this point that none of us, not a one of us, who I don't think ever intended or wanted to be an expert on gender. Neil, how are you? Good to see you. And damn it, Stephanie Holmes, where's my what? Where's my wrench? Neil, hold on. Hold on. I'm gonna have to just you wait. I got other fish to fry, but I'll get to you. Not a one of us carrying on. Not a one of us ever wanted to be an expert on these issues, but we kind of grew up that way. We kind of had to. We learned, some of us anyway, learned at an early age about the consequences of thinking about gender, perceiving ourselves to be a gender that we weren't assigned at birth. Some of us struggled with it mightily for a very long time and thought quite deeply about it. And this kid gets it, just gets it. So I'm just going to start playing some of this stuff, and we'll stop. And I hope you enjoy this stuff, and I urge you to watch the whole thing. It's a pretty short video, really. It's 31 minutes, and I'm going to just start towards the end because it quite brilliantly covers some of the conundrums associated with exclusively assigning sex as a binary thing.
Because that's how he's described it in the past.
I don't think it is an exception because, as I said, I think a true
Matt
resident
Walsh.
of the middle circle of the Venn diagram.
This is
would be
Matt Walsh.
who has the
Matt Walsh is saying the same things as Dawkins is right now. Is saying the same things as Helen Joyce did. Matt Walsh, in his documentary, is in the vanguard that Richard Dawkins, of all people, is picking up here. I honestly don't know if Dawkins realizes the damage he's doing. I honestly don't know. But he's doing damage. To people who are already facing tremendous opprobrium.
reproductive capabilities of both genders. And no one like that exists. I mean, not to be crude, but there isn't anyone who can get themselves pregnant, right? So I don't think, I think what you're talking about there are people who have deformities. And so in their case, it would be more difficult than usual to determine what their actual biological sex is, because the usual indicators aren't there or aren't as obvious. but that doesn't mean that they don't have a biological sex.
You agree with me, right?
Again, this is laughably wrong, and I'll demonstrate why by charting some hypothetical intersex people on my handy biological sex settings graphic. So the average endosex males constellation looks something like this, and the average endosex females constellation looks something like this. Endosex is an adjective that essentially just means not intersex. It's used to describe people who fit comfortably into the category of either male or female. So these are your average endosex constellations. Kind of boring if you ask me. Intersex people's constellations are way cooler. Here's the settings for a hypothetical person who has what we call Turner syndrome. They have one full X chromosome and one partially or fully missing chromosome. They have ovaries and, like many people with Turner syndrome, had a normal amount of female gametes during gestation, but lost most or all of them before birth. I've indicated this by turning on egg production, but graying it out. They also have internal and external genitalia of the average female. If I were to actually...
So Jackson here has developed this model that is similar to the controls on your iPhone or your smartphone that covers all of the various factors that go into determining biological sex, and that includes hormone levels. It includes appearance of genitalia. It includes gamete production. It includes secondary sex characteristics. It includes all of this stuff, and it's really quite brilliant as an analogy. I really watch the whole thing. Seriously, it's just great. I gotta hit the thing.
Ask Matt Walsh. I have a feeling he would probably say that yes, this person is a female because they have the ability, in principle, to get pregnant. Still unclear what that means, but they still don't meet the criteria he laid out earlier because they don't have XX chromosomes. Okay, but what about a person who is born with XX chromosomes but has testes that don't produce sperm and the internal and external genitalia of the average male? Is this person a female? Do their chromosomes indicate that they can, in principle, get pregnant? The penis might get in the way. Okay, what if that same person's external genitalia is more ambiguous? Are they female now? What about if they also have ambiguous internal genitalia and ambiguous gonads? Are they female yet? Is this person by their nature able to get pregnant? What about them indicates that? I'm so confused, Matt. These aren't impossible hypotheticals, by the way. Everything I'm showing you, to the best of my knowledge, are real combinations that people can naturally be born with. Those last three constellations I showed you all represent people who would probably be diagnosed with what we call XX male syndrome. Okay, but what about a person born with XY gonadal dysgenesis? They're born with XY chromosomes, but ambiguous gonads and internal genitalia, and with the external genitalia of a typical female. So they have XY chromosomes, but would most likely be assigned female at their birth because of their genitals. Is this person female? Or how about a person with androgen insensitivity syndrome? Androgens are what we consider the male hormones. So a person insensitive to androgens might be born with XY chromosomes, testes, and have hormone levels of the typical male. But because their bodies don't respond to androgens, which I've displayed by graying out the testosterone slider, they have ambiguous internal genitalia and external genitalia of the average female. Again, despite the XY chromosomes and despite the testes and typical male hormone levels, this person would probably be assigned female at their birth. Is this person a female, Matt? How do we tell if they can get pregnant in principle? What does that mean? Oh my gosh. I'm actually gonna lose it. What does that mean?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
It doesn't mean anything.
What do you mean?
It means Matt can't come up with a better argument. Like, where do we put these people in your disconnected Venn diagram? Can you see the problem with Matt's model of sex distribution yet? There are plenty of people, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of women walking about living their lives as the females they were told they were since they were born, but who, according to whatever random standard Matt Walsh has, should actually be considered males with an intersex condition. And to top it off, because Matt believes that sex and gender are inseparable, and living as a gender different from your biological sex is immoral, all of these women must now be forcibly transitioned into men. That is the natural conclusion to Matt Walsh's logic here. If you still don't believe me, indulge me for just a little bit longer. I'm going to map a few more different intersex people on my chart. Here's the constellation.
All right, so my headphones are now dying, so I need to switch it up. Give me just a moment. I am going to also let's see. I'm going to fade away for a sec because I am patched and need to get a little bit of a thing going on here. So I'll be right back. Don't you go away, because you need to hear the rest of this. Please don't grow. All right, yep, coming. I'm coming. It's coming back. Slowly but surely. Slowly I turn, step by step, inch by inch, yard by yard. All right. Yeah, here we go. Thank you for indulging me. Yep, here we go.
Of a person with what we call...
I forgot to plug my other earphones in. Damn it. I'm so stupid. Hashtag unprofessional, as Uncle Bobby likes to say. Very true, very true. So, you know, amateurs. God damn it. Fucking people. Yeah, here we go. The amateurs. Yep, here we go. Let me go back. I'll go back 15 seconds. So whatever it is, there goes my keyboard on the floor. Also unprofessional.
The natural conclusion to Matt Walsh's logic here. If you still don't believe me, indulge me for just a little bit longer. I'm going to map a few more different intersex people on my chart. Here's the constellation of a person with what we call 45X, 46XY mosaicism. They have some cells with only one X chromosome and some cells with one X and one Y chromosome. Is this person a male or a female? You might say male because they have testes, more masculine external genitalia, and can produce sperm. But what if their gonads are ambiguous and don't produce sperm? Are they still a male? What if their external genitalia is more feminine? Are they still a male? Okay, what if the person with a more feminine genitalia was assigned male at birth, and the person with a more masculine genitalia was assigned female at birth? What then? This isn't just a hypothetical either. This example is based off of real people. While researching for this video, I found this study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism in 2012. I was looking at these tables in the study to get an idea of how to chart 45X, 46XY mosaicism on my sex settings graphic. The tables include information such as whether the patient had scrotal fusion, a micropenis, and the location of their gonads. They used this information to calculate the patient's external masculinization score. The paper includes two tables, one for the female patients and one for the male patients. You may be saying, oh, this proves Matt Walsh's model. There may be intersex conditions, but scientists know everyone can still be separated into the categories of male or female. But then you may notice that several of the patients labeled female have a higher masculinization score than several of the patients labeled male. So I went ahead and reordered all the patients by their external masculinization score. In the case of a tie, I just went by patient number, which means in the case of a tie between a male patient and a female patient, the male patient will be listed as more masculine by default. Of the 25 patients.
All right. So what we're talking about here is really quite interesting. I want to, these are people with exactly the same genetic makeup, some of whom are categorized as male, some of whom are categorized as female. With differences in physiognomy that have allowed other people to make judgments as to what their sex and gender both are. Which is a pretty good illustration of the fact that both sex and gender are ascertained in the real world by factors other than chromosomes or gametes or all of the other things that, according to Richard Dawkins, that according to Helen Joyce, that according to Matt Walsh, are dispositive, definitive, and inalterable. I don't want to make the case that people with ambiguous sex, born with ambiguous sex, and trans people are exactly the same. They're not. They're not. There is overlap between the two communities. But at base, we're all humans. You know, we're part of the human family. And as such, it seems a bit of a slap in the face for other members of the human family to make judgments about our worthiness to be in whichever category, to be fully human, to be fully accepted. And we all have different stories. I mean, it's like we're not some sort of monolith, and we're not really ideological about this. We're just basically human beings trying to live. That's the conundrum we face, and it's particularly difficult when experts want to get up on a tip and say those of us who are simply trying to exist and push back on these rather poisonous notions about the absolutes, the absolutist thinking. The absolutist thinking that demonizes us. Has meant to our actual lives in terms of, it's like, look, Dickie, you can have your opinion, but what we're facing as a community are laws. What the intersex community is facing is actual operations, and something that you yourself oppose deeply and think is a horrible idea. That that infants should be assigned physically through dangerous, complicated medical procedures, a sex presentation that suits your whim and not their physical existence. Anyway, we'll roll the tape.
Patients in the study, the female patient with the most masculinized body was listed as more masculine than 3 of the male patients. And the male patient with the least masculinized body was ranked as more feminine than 4 of the female patients. And the least masculinized male had a score that tied the 3 least masculinized female patients. So naturally, my next question was, if they all have the same chromosomal combination, what makes some of these patients male and some of them female, if not the masculinization of the body? The answer may surprise you. In the patients and methods section of the paper, the authors write,
a final group of 25 consecutive patients with a confirmed karyotype of 45x46 XY mosaicism were included in this study. We divided the patients into 2 groups according to the gender of their rearing, 18 males and 7 females.
The gender of their rearing. So what makes one of these patients male and the other female is the sex that was chosen for them by the adults that were in the room the day that they were born. Quite literally, the only reason that patient 20 is labeled female.
Do you see how this young man is speaking to Helen Joyce's mocking point? That Dr. Richard Dawkins wholeheartedly and enthusiastically agreed to, how ridiculous it is that gender assigned at birth is even a thing. It blows me away, the brilliance of this young man.
Female and patient 6 is labeled male is because of the sex that they were assigned at their birth. This is one reason why trans activists use language like sex assigned at birth, not just because it's more inclusive, but also because it's more accurate. Patient 20 has a body that is, in some ways, more male than patient 6. But we call her a female not because there's some specific immutable biological factor that makes her one, but because that's what the doctor and or parents decided for her when she was born. So while this column of the chart is labeled sex, would it not be more accurate to label it sex assigned at birth? And what about patient 9, who was assigned male at birth but has a uterus? A uterus, by nature, exists for pregnancy, right? So can we not say that this male person can get pregnant in principle? If so, does that make him a female? And if it does, according to Matt Walsh's logic, does that not mean that we have a moral imperative to transition him into a woman? This is and
this is going back to one of Matt Walsh's points, which is there is no such thing as the inability to divide people into the category male or female because of the potentialities involved in various organs. So what Matt would do, what Dawkins would do, is break people down into particular specific body parts and define sex that way and define gender that way. That's what Helen Joyce would do. It's sex essentialism. And it's also focusing on the language that Donald Trump's Department of Health and Human Services proposed be written into the Federal Register, which is to say specifically that sex is immutable and defined at birth. It's not. It's messy. It's a mishigas. Not in all cases. Not even in a huge number of cases. but in enough cases to warrant a little bit more nuanced thought than Richard Dawkins, Helen Joyce. I could name others in the prominent members of the atheist community who basically say, well, we'll agree to the sex and gender thing up to a point, but beyond this point, you shall not pass. Usually that point is well, what about sports? And again, what about kids? And in this case, these children were assigned male or female by virtue of got a dick, got a coochie. And there's ambiguity.
Major problem for Matt Walsh's model of biological sex distribution. Because again, he would either have to admit that the strict categories of male and female don't include all human people, or he would have to argue for a specific way of classifying all intersex individuals into one category or the other, forcibly transitioning thousands of cisgender intersex people in the process. Also, this is one study of 25 individuals with one specific type of intersex condition. There are dozens of categories of intersex and countless variation within those categories, not to mention the variation that exists within endosex populations. Biological sex is complicated, very complicated. Like Michelle Forcier and Anne Fausto Sterling said, it is best represented by multidimensional points in space as a constellation. It's definitely not a binary, and if sex isn't a binary, then the biological essentialist view of gender espoused by the likes of Matt Walsh cannot be supported. And if biological sex is this complicated, don't even get me started on gender.
So yeah, let's call it here. This young man did just such a great job with this video, and I urge you go ahead and if you've got the time, give it a watch in full. I just wanted to dip in for a minute and talk to y'all about this, and I appreciate y'all so much. I appreciate your helping me build this channel. I appreciate all your views. I appreciate your having the patience to share a few thoughts with me. And I really appreciate your likes, your shares, your subscribes, your support through Ko-Fi, through Patreon, through all of that stuff. I think you guys are the best. So I guess I'm going to wrap it up here. And leave comments. Anybody who's seeing this later, I'll leave comments for me. I'm Stephanie Helms. I'm a trans woman in sport. Got some stuff coming up. I think I'm going to be talking about some of these issues on the line at the end of the month on TACUS, and that's the plan anyway. We'll see if everything, if the constellations align, that'll be happening on the 31st of August. And again, really appreciate everybody who's watched the video so far, and I love you all. Good night. Goodbye. Oh my, I should have been large. Oh, see, bad stuff. one final thought. The picture that I chose as the thumbnail for this video is a picture of me at the age of 15, and she was me. I was one of those kids. I love you. Good night.